the wood may not be praiseworthy necessarily. It might be neutral. I'm not certain of that. And it was, but Allah knows best. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'ina lahum bi ihsan ila yawm ad-din wa alayna ma'ahum wa fihim bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Nawayna at-ta'alluma wa at-ta'lim. We intend to learn and teach, to acquire knowledge and impart. Wan-nafa wal-intifa', and we intend giving and receiving benefit. Wat-tadhkir wal-mudhakara, and we intend reminding and taking admonition. Wal-ifada wal-istifada, we intend to profit mutually. والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. We intend encouraging adherence to Allah's book and the sunnah of Allah's messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم. والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير. We intend inviting to guidance and leading to all good. ابتغاء وجه الله, all of that seeking Allah's countenance. وَمَرْضَاتِهِ, Allah's good pleasure, وَقُرْبِهِ وَثَوَابِهِ subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah's nearness and reward, glorious and exalted is He. And we intend what our author, beloved dear author, Hujjatul Islam, Al-Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, what he intended in this blessed treatise, Bidayat Hidayah, as well as our sheikhs, particularly those in our chain up to the author. Rahimahumullah wa hafidhahumullah, as well as the pious, and what Allah knows of good intentions. And we ask Allah to accept and aid us in this and give us a good ending to this, completion to this text, a good seal of this text. Inshallah, 2 lessons, and inshallah we'll complete this, anticipating to do khatam, the last asr before Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. And it's a practice of our shuyukh to gather on the first evening of Ramadan after Maghrib. So in 2 weeks we may have a slightly delayed begin time for this lesson as well, like we did today, so that we go up close to Maghrib, inshallah ta'ala, and then do Sir and Salawat after Maghrib and welcome Ramadan if it looks like the sighting or the 30-day completion is going to happen in that way, inshallah ta'ala. So we are talking about how to interact with acquaintances, neither friends that have been have proven themselves with the conditions of companionship, like honesty, good character, uprightness, and so on. Not that group, or the group that you just don't know, you never encounter, but the group between those two that you encounter, and circumstances demand amicable behavior, but the heart foundations of a real relationship for Allah's sake are not there. So there's a certain way to deal with them. So the next counsel he gives is لا تعيذن أحدا منهم ما لم تتوسم فيه أولا مخايل القبول وإلا لم يسمع منك. So the Imam says, and he's someone of immense knowledge, practice, and wisdom. Some of these things relate to conditions even of al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. And he says, the Imam says, do not admonish them. Do not admonish any of them unless you first see in him a willingness to accept it. I would say the signs of acceptance. Makhayil. Lest he refuse to hear it from you and turn against you, right? So rather than listening, you just have an additional opponent. And one doesn't need that. It's just a distraction. And he will say what is actually mentioned in the books where they deal with, and inshallah we'll cover that somehow, some way in our curriculum. Al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. First, you inform people of mistakes gently, and that has to precede admonition. And you don't go to a higher level of reminding when a lower level will work. That's not permissible because it's causing annoyance without need. And if it leads to a greater harm, it is not permissible to remind, to do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. And if the harm only befalls you, it's not obligatory. So this case that he's mentioning might be harm befalling you, but in any case, it's disruptive. And khusuma, spreading argumentation and enmity, isn't of any use. So he's saying, be careful of that, essentially. That's what he's saying. وَإِذَا أَخْتَأُوا فِي مَسْأَلَةٍ وَكَانُوا يَأْنَفُونَ عَنِ التَّعْلِيمِ مِنْ كُلِّ أَحَدٍ فَلَا تُعَلِّمْهُم فإنهم يستفيدون منك علما ويصبحون لك أعداء إلا إذا تعلق ذلك بمعصية يقارفونها عن جهل. Next point. If one of them, again, acquaintances, has made a mistake in some matter, I would say question, right? A question of knowledge, and he's speaking in the context of a seeker of knowledge. So the likelihood is this is a legal point, but it could be a theological point. You hear theological mistakes articulated, especially for those who amuse themselves by religious talk. And it's not the point of it. It's not tea time talk to whip it out on people. It's mudakarat from those that connect to the learned and transmit what they say. And it's great if majalis consist of that, but it's not casual talk, and it's not based on opinion. La ilaha illallah. So he said someone makes a mistake in a question of knowledge. Mas'ala matlubun khabri yubarhanu anha fil ilm. Right, something that is to be that we seek the knowledge of, and proofs are made for it in knowledge, in disciplines, right? So a question of knowledge, they make a mistake. If they are adverse, so he said if they arrogantly refuse knowledge from anyone, I would say if they're adverse from taking knowledge from anyone, then don't teach them. Yet nafun, it comes from the word nose, which is anf, hold up your nose at things. So that's why he's translating that as being arrogant. You could also say they're too proud to learn, then don't teach them. For they will gain knowledge from you and become enemies, unless that pertains to a sin that is being committed out of ignorance. So then what do? The first level of al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, you are obliged to do so with conditions. So he says, فَذْكُرِ الْحَقِّ بِلُطْفٍ مِنْ غَيْرِ عُنْفٍ. Mention the truth gently without being harsh. Right? So gently inform them of the mistake that's being made when a sin is being committed, and a detail that could be added, a sin that is a sin by consensus. And that is a condition for the permissibility of an amr bil ma'ruf and a nahy anil munkar. If it is not by consensus, you can still gently inform them that some of the fuqaha say this is prohibited, but in the circumstances, someone that's not inclined to learn, perhaps you wouldn't take that course. La ilaha illallah. So the Imam continues, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ مِنْهُمْ كَرَامَةً وَخَيْرًا فَاشْكُرُ اللَّهِ الَّذِي حَبَّبَكَ إِلَيْهِمْ. If you see that they have done you an act of generosity or goodness, and I would translate that, or as honor, if you see from them honor and good treatment, and from that honor maybe generosity, karama has both implications, then thank Allah who made you beloved to them. And understand that being beloved to the hearts of Allah's servants is a blessing. It can be a dangerous blessing when it's prestige, when it's jah. It's a dangerous blessing, and it's a responsibility that one must be wielded appropriately. You can intercede on people's behalf, for example, but it is something that is sought to be beloved, right? To be beloved. And there is a beautiful dua that I will say, inshallah, because I was charged to share this with brothers in seeking knowledge. And I researched it later and I couldn't find it, but others found it. It's in Imam at-Tirmidhi's compilation. And it's from Ali, and he said that someone who says this will become, after each prayer, will become learned. And it is Rabbi zidni ilman ووسع لي في رزقي وبارك لي فيما رزقتني وجلني محبوبا في قلوب عبادك وعزيزا في عيونهم ووجيها في الدنيا والآخرة ومن المقربين يا كثير النوال يا حسن الفعال يا قائما بلا زوال فلك الحمد والمنة والشرف على كل حال. And that is Rabbi Zidni Ilman. Oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge and expand my provision and bless for me what you have provided for me and make me beloved to the hearts of your servants. And that's the point, right? That Mawdi' al-Shahid is here. Make me beloved to the hearts of your servants. So these are things that are really sought. Knowledge is sought, provision and blessing in your provision is sought, and being dear to the hearts of the servants is sought, particularly for someone that has to transmit knowledge, because that's a big part of it, that they that there's a fondness and a connection, and they'll accept what you transmit. Azizan fi uyunihim, and precious in their eyes, or honored in their eyes. Wajihan fi dunya wal akhirah, and of eminence in this world and the next. And Allah described Isa as being that way, right? Allah made him wajih fi dunya wal akhirah, wa min al-muqarrabin, and of those brought near. And then he calls on Allah by some of Allah's names. Ya Kathir al-Nawal, O you who gives much. Ya Hasan al-Fi'al, of beautiful works. Ya Qa'iman bila zawal, the one who exists without ever ending. Falak al-hamdu wal-minnatu wa-sharafu, and yours is praise and favor and honor in every state. So that's a long dua. The point of connected to our lesson, in addition to other benefits like attaining knowledge, is that one asks, the Prophet ﷺ taught us to ask to be beloved to his servants. And there is a beautiful tradition, and this tradition relates to what's going to come next as well. Because next he's going to say essentially, be diplomatic and don't get into contention. He's going to recite some poetry about that. And in the modern world, especially in North American culture that prides itself on candidness, and many of the protocols of the old world have been removed, some of this is going to seem insincere, right? If you were to talk in an old tradition, Eastern or Western, especially to nobles who had to manage a lot of people and understood the harm that is incurred by undue conflict, it would be understood better. And you'll see what I mean, inshallah, when we get to that. In any case, it relates to being beloved, and it also relates to mudara. So we're going to read a bunch of traditions from Allah's Messenger, and the reason we're reading many of them is because they're repetitive, and they have weakness in their chain, but due to their repetition, that gives a general strength. And hadith with weakness in chains are acted upon in fada'il. So the first is an athar. It's actually a mursal hadith. Mursal means there's a gap, and in this case, the gap is between the tabi'in and Allah's Messenger. And the sahabi is omitted. However, this tabi'i is from the kibar of the tabi'in. And the marasil of the kibar of the tabi'in are more accepted, right? And so this is from Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رأس العقل بعد الإيمان بالله التودد إلى الناس. The head of intellect, like the foremost of intellect, or reason after faith in Allah, is conducting oneself in a manner that one becomes beloved to people. So that's the point that connects to our lesson. However, these other points are of benefit, so we're going to read the whole hadith. وَمَا يَسْتَغْنِي رَجُلٌ عَنْ مَشُورًا, and a man cannot do without seeking counsel from others, taking shura. وَإِنَّ أَهْلَ الْمَعْرُوفِ فِي الدُّنْيَا هُمْ أَهْلُ الْمَعْرُوفِ فِي الْآخِرَةِ, and the people of good or of repute in this world are the people of repute in the akhirah. وَإِنَّ أَهْلَ الْمُنْكَرِ فِي الدُّنْيَا هُمْ أَهْلُ الْمُنْكَرِ فِي الْآخِرَةِ, and the people of wrong action in this world are the people of wrong in the hereafter. وَعَنْ مَيْمُونَ بِن مَهْرَانَ قَالَ, and this is also an athar, and the first one is Al-Bayhaqi in his Sunan Al-Kubra. These next series are in Shu'ab al-Iman, branches of faith, by Al-Bayhaqi. He narrates a similar athar, At-Tawaddud ila nas nisful aql, that conducting oneself in a manner in which you become beloved to people is half of reason or intellect. وَحُسْنُ الْمَسْأَلَةِ نِصْفُ الْفِقْهِ, and asking good questions is half of acquiring religious knowledge or fiqh, understanding. وَرِفْقُكَ فِي مَعِيشَتِكَ يُلْقِي عَنْكَ نِصْفَ الْمَؤُونَةِ, and you're being cautious in your livelihood. And Allah knows best, you'll see from the other hadith, this has the implication of being frugal in your livelihood, in your expenditures, will alleviate from you half of the difficulty of supporting yourself. Meaning that good frugality and good economics is half of the question of maintaining yourself properly and alleviating difficulty. So that's, he says, specifically Al-Imam Al-Bayhaqi says that the isnad of this one is weak. There's weakness in the chain, but it's only encouraging fada'il, right? And as we mentioned, numerous chains occur on the very same meaning, specifically the one that we're emphasizing, at tawaddud ila nas. This next hadith is beautiful. It has Nafi' bin Umar radiallahu anhum to Rasulullah, qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-iqtisadu fi nafaqa nisful ma'isha, economics in spending, or moderacy, frugality in spending, is half of livelihood. What tawaddud ila nas nisful aql, and being beloved to people is half of reason. Wa husnu su'al nisful ilm, and asking good questions is half of knowledge. This next hadith is an al-Hasan, who would be al-Hasan al-Basri, an Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhum, qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, radsul aqli ba'da al-iman billah, at-tawaddud ila nas, wa ahlu at-tawaddud fi dunya lahum daraja fil jannah. And so the beginning of the hadith is the same. The head of reason after faith in Allah is being beloved to people, and the people who are beloved in this world, they have a degree in Jannah. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ لَهُ فِي الْجَنَّةِ دَرَجَةٌ فَهُوَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. And someone who has a degree in Jannah, then he's in Jannah, meaning that those who are beloved to people in this world, they'll be in Jannah. وَالِاقْتِصَادُ وَنِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ حُسْنُ الْمَسْأَلَةِ, and half of knowledge is asking good questions. وَالِاقْتِصَادُ فِي الْمَعِيشَةِ نِصْفُ الْعَيْشِ, same meaning, frugality and spending is half of livelihood. تَكْفِي نِصْفُ النَّفَقَةِ, and that will suffice you from half of your spendings. وَرَكَعَتَانِ مِنْ رَجُلٍ وَرَعٍ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ أَلْفِ رَكَعَةٍ مِنْ مُخَلِّطٍ, and 2 rakas from a man who is scrupulous, meaning they avoid doubtful matters, is better than 1,000 rakas from someone who is negligent. وَمَا تَمَّ دِينُ الْمُسْلِمِ قَطْ حَتَّى يَتِمَّ عَقْلُهُ, and the deen, which is taj, ibadah wal jaza, it's obedience, worship, and recompense. The deen of a Muslim is not complete until his aql is complete, his reason is complete, and which is the capacity in a person that restrains them from unseemly conduct. وَالدُّعَاء يَرُدُّ الْأَمْرَ وَصَدَقَةُ السِّرِّ تُطْفِئُ غَضَبَ الرَّبِّ, and dua repels the command. And perhaps that's the meaning of nothing avails from fate except dua, meaning the fate that the angels believe they're going to conduct for you may be changed due to your dua, not that Allah's knowledge and will change. And secret charity extinguishes the anger of the Lord. وَصَدَقَةُ الْعَلَانِيَةِ تَقِي مَيْتَةَ السُّوءِ, and open charity protects you from a bad death. وَصَنَائِلُ الْمَعْرُوفِ إِلَى النَّاسِ تَقِي صَاحِبُهَا مَسَارِيَ السُّوءِ, and showing good to people, do good deeds towards people, protect the person from a bad death. Al-afat wal-muhlikat, various harms and causes of destruction. وَالْأَهْلُ الْمَعْرُوفِ فِي الدُّنْيَا هُمْ أَهْلُ الْمَعْرُوفِ فِي الْآخِرَةِ, and the people of good in this world are the people of good in the hereafter. وَالْمَعْرُوفِ يَنْقَطِعُ فِي مَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَنْقَطِعُ فِي مَا بَيْنَ اللَّهِ وَبَيْنَ مَنْ افتعله. And good ceases between people, but it does not cease between Allah and the one who has done it, right? That the reward will continue to be attained, inshallah, and Allah knows best. Al-Bayhaqi, again, he narrated this in Shu'ab, and he said there's weakness in the chain. Beautiful hadith, though. Many fadail, and there's shawahid for these hadith from other hadith. Some of them are well known, some of them are sahih, like sadaqat as-sir tudfi'u ghadab ar-Rabb. Yes, sir.
How do you get access to that?
Huh?
How do you get access to this?
The Arabic? I could share it with you.
English.
The English, the recording, we're translating it for you here. Can't be lazy. Take good notes, inshallah. Help everyone else, inshallah ta'ala. La ilaha illallah. This next hadith, an Ali radiallahu anhu, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رأس العقل بعد الدين التودد إلى الناس, the head of reason after deen. This is after deen, not after iman billah, is being beloved to people. واستناء الخير إلى كل بر واستناء الخير إلى كل بر وفاجر. And the head of intellect is also, and this overlaps very much with what's coming later, being good to everyone, whether they're pious or corrupt. Right? Just go around, be good to people. Be good to them. Don't get into conflicts with people. Allahu Akbar. And then, so he says this, and this is, there's hadith knowledge in this, what he's saying. So he's mentioning a number, and all of these are al-Bayhaqi, and all of these are in Shu'ab al-Iman, right? So then he says, what ruwayna fit tawaddud al-nas an Ali bin Yazid. So this is an Ali bin Abi Talib, and he says, but we've also narrated this meaning an Ali bin Yazid, wa an ibn al-Musayyib, and we read that, right? The first one was an ibn al-Musayyib, an Nabi, alayhi salam, mursalan, right? With a cut between him and the Sahabi. Wa ruwaynahu an Abil Juwayriya, and we've related it, or rawaynahu from the father of Juwayriya, wa an ibn Abbasin, an Nabi, radiyallahu anhuma, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alayhi salam. So many chains, and additional chains increases strength. And then and then the next, I thought it was from Ali, and it's on the next topic. So the point is, and Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he encourages us in these hadith and others to behave in a way that is beloved. And so if we find people honoring us and treating us as though we're beloved, we should thank Allah for that, right? He's the one who made us beloved to them and covered our faults from them. Were our faults to appear, they would flee from us and have an evil opinion of us. But Allah covers that. So if that's the case, we should praise the one who in a beautiful way covers the faults of his servants, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what about when we see the opposite? وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ مِنْهُمْ شَرًّا فَكِلْهُمْ إِلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ وَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شَرِّهِمْ. If you see harm from them, turn them over, make Allah the wakil of protector and governor of what the outcome of that is. Turn them over to Allah and seek refuge in Allah from their harm. وَلَا تُعَاتِبْهُمْ, and don't censure them for it. وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمْ لِمَا لَمْ تَعْرِفُوا حَقِّي. Don't say, O seeker of knowledge, to the laity, why didn't you acknowledge my right? وَأَنَا فُلَانِ ibn فُلَانِ, and I'm so-and-so, son of so-and-so. وَأَنَا الْفَاضِلْ فِي الْعُلُومِ, and I'm excellent in learning. فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ كَلَامُ الْحُمْقَى, that is the speech of idiots. وَأَشَدُّ النَّاسِ حِمَاقًا مَنْ يُزَكِّي نَفْسَهُ وَيُثْنِي عَلَيْهَا, and the most dumb of people. How does he translate that? Most foolish of people is the one who praises himself, right? The one who praises himself. And tazkiyah has the same meaning as thana, right? وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ, and then so don't become arrogant, he's saying. Imam al-Haddad says, وَاحْذَرْ وَإِيَّاكَ مِنْ قَوْلِ الْجَلُوهِ أَنَا وَأَنْتَ مِنْ دُونِي فِي فَضْلٍ وَحَسَبٍ. Said, beware, I warn you of the statement of the ignoramus, I, the one who's selfish and praises himself and vainglorious, and you're less than me, waliyadu billah ta'ala, right? Allahu Akbar. Allah protect us from that, right? So that's a warning to all, but especially those of us that whenever you learn, and it's religious knowledge or otherwise, right? If you learn medicine or other disciplines, you know things that other people are ignorant of. Arrogance is one of the things you have to fight in yourself. Or the same, you become stronger than people, better looking than people, wealthier than people. Those things Allah's given you, those are things that might become a cause of your being arrogant towards them. He's warning the student from not doing that. And he's saying in the face of ignorance, don't do it, right? Much less those who are treating us well. And then he continues, وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ لَمْ يُسَلِّطْهُمْ عَلَيْكَ إِلَّا لِذَنْبٍ سَبَقَ مِنْكَ. And this is a mu'amala ma'Allah. He said, know that Allah did not afflict you with their harm except due to a sin that preceded. وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. Right? And anything that befalls you of misfortune is due to what your hands have earned. So that's another mu'amala. If you offer nasiha, people reject it, blame yourself.Maybe you were insincere. Maybe Allah afflicted you with their rejection due to a sin that you committed. فَاسْتَغْفِرْ اللَّهَ مِنْ ذَنْبِكَ. So seek Allah's forgiveness for your sin. وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ ذَلِكَ عُقُوبَةً مِنَ اللَّهِ لَكَ. And know that that is a punishment from Allah for you. That's how you view it for yourself. And that's adab. Because rationally, we know, for example, Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, who was sinless, was mistreated. So for someone who does not have any sin, then it's a raise of their degree. But as an adab, you should see it as, and if you're honest, you're not a Nabi Muhammad, you're not Ma'asum, you have plenty of sins that need to be removed while you're in this dunya. So, but that's a mu'amala, it's adab there, right? And Allah knows best. Yes, sir.
I think in previous lessons you mentioned there's some preconditions to being in a position to Amr Ma'ruf or Nahi Munkar. And certainly in this case, if someone is doing something to you, the Shaykh is saying to kind of better to let it go. What about when we see someone abusing someone else, or I guess
Beautiful, yeah.
Where it doesn't necessarily reach the point where we have to go to some authority, but still we see something that.
Yep. It goes. That's a great question. So the question is, he said this. The questioner said this entails a mistreatment, a personal mistreatment. What about if we see a third party being mistreated? And for one, it goes up to the previous question. Either, right, to hurt a Muslim is haram. So if someone's verbally abusing someone or hurting them and mistreating them in another way, it's not unlikely that that's an impermissible act. Depending on the threshold, it could just be a little impolite, but if it's actually what we call ida, it's not permissible. So that goes back to the point of if they see something if we witness something that's haram, to gently remind the person. And then also he mentioned previously come into people's defense, right? Unsur akhaka dhaliman aw mazluma. Yeah, so one should. And they mentioned that excusing affronts towards us personally is elevated, but when it is the rights of others, defending them is more elevated. Yeah. And Allah knows best, yes, sir.
So are there situations where a person should demand their rights from others?
Very few. Yeah. Generally, it's not chivalrous to demand your rights. Yeah. There might be exceptions. It's permissible, and it depends on what exactly the context is. For example, if someone is trying to prevent you from praying in a place where you're entitled to, but that is demanding your ability to, protecting your ability to fulfill Allah's right over you, right? But the personal had of your own nafs, generally that's excused in higher character, as opposed to that of others. Others are to be protected unless they're so close to you that it's like you might take care of them yourself, right? And the Prophet ﷺ would do that. He would excuse things for him and his people. But other rights of Allah, he was very firm about. Yeah. La ilaha illallah. But in this case, he's saying that have a transaction with Allah or relationship with Allah through what people do. So if we see things we don't like from people, recognize the one showing us that is Allah and ponder why. And some of the pious of the past, they said, I could tell if I've disobeyed my Lord by the demeanor of my spouse and the animal that I ride, right? So when he would see misconduct from his family members and the livestock, in that time it was livestock, right? He would recognize that was a sign of his own disobedience or su'al adab with Allah, right? So he's saying to rise above the muck of just interacting with the creation to reflecting on what the Creator is telling us through the things that He shows us from them. He continues, the Shaykh continues, Kun fima bainahum sami'an lihaqqihim, asamma an batilihim, natuqan bimahasinihim, samutan an masawihim. Says, when you are among them, listen to their truth, be deaf towards the falsehood that you hear from them, articulate or proclaim their good qualities, and remain silent from their bad qualities, or silent concerning their shortcomings, he says. Nice. وَاحْذَرْ مُخَالَطَةَ مُتَفَقِّهَةِ الزَّمَانِ. Allahu Akbar. This one is tough. He says, I'm just going to read it because it's long and we want to make some time. He says, be wary of associating with the pseudo jurists of your time. You could also say the juristic students, especially those who busy themselves with differences of opinion and disputation. For they will just be waiting for a disastrous turn of fortune to strike you out of envy. They will make conclusive judgments about you based on negative supposition and will wink at one another about you behind your back. If you keep their company, they take account of every slip, then confront you with them all when they are angry or during a debate, right? Trying to defame you or assassinate your character rather than rationally dispute your argument, right? Which isn't permissible in debate. And there's rigorous conditions for debate that Imam al-Ghazali mentions in Ihya. They do not help you when you stumble, forgive you when you slip, nor cover up any fault you may have. They take you to account over the most trivial, insignificant things and envy you over every blessing, great or small. They incite your brothers against you by tale-bearing, gossiping like little girls, and false accusation. And forgive me, but this is how some folks get down, especially with social media. Things they would never say to your face. They run around and chatter like words I can't say in this company, but I see Kafani and Jermaine on here. They understand what I mean. Maybe they're still there. La ilaha illallah. Gossip. It's unbecoming, especially min rijal. And false accusation. If they seem pleased with you outwardly, they are all flattery. If they get angry, they reveal a deep inward resentment. They are externally clothed, but within they are wolves. Allah protect us from that. This is the conclusion one comes to about them after observing the majority of them, except those whom Allah Most High protects. To keep their company is to incur loss, and close association with them leads to utter failure. If this is the judgment of one who affects, right, they affectatiously show friendship outwardly, what then of the one who openly shows his enmity to you? And then he's going to give advice in poetry about diplomacy and not unnecessarily falling into conflict. So what he is saying there, he is talking about a culture that developed when people who possess religious knowledge were extremely influential with the rulers and well-funded, and a culture of competition and courting the favor of the rulers developed, and they would debate publicly in the court of the ruler. And it was really, as you could see, very dog eat dog. There was a preoccupation with levels of detail in law and debating those details that wasn't to the benefit generally of the way of the hereafter of the community. And Imam al-Ghazali excelled in that environment to being the most or one of the most prominent in that environment. And he recognized the error of that environment and left it. And that's why you see him speaking of it very severely. In our time, I don't know how much of that we could say is as relevant as it was then, because the proximity to rulers and the influence that they gained really isn't the same. The religion in general is much weaker, right? Religiosity is much weaker than it was in that time. He was 5th century, right in Baghdad, right around the seat of Khilafah, at the most prominent school. So that was a very different circumstance. But nonetheless, any group that is competing for an objective that they see to be limited can develop hasad and type of dog-eat-dog type behavior. And he's saying beware of that. And it can occur among people in the dawah work. It can occur, and Allah protect us. And anyone who works a lot around movers and shakers in this quote-unquote Islamic work does see some of this. And he's saying beware of it, and may Allah protect us and give us to have nasiha to every believer, right? As he said, look at their good points and mention them, conceal their faults and remain silent to them, be good to everyone. Though here what he's saying is to be cautious, right? To be cautious. So then he mentions poetry in this regard. And he says, take the advice of the one who said, be cautious of your enemy once, yet be wary of your friend 1,000 times. For it may be that the friend will turn against you and then knows better how to harm you, right? So these are just hikam. These are aphorisms from people that have observed with some wisdom and are imparting it. It has been similarly said, your enemy may sometimes come from your friends, so do not have too many friends, right? For most of diseases that you see have their origins in eating and drinking. And Allah knows best. He's saying that things that are normally consumed, harm can come from them. So those in whose company we're normally, those we normally find ourselves in their company still, the harm can result. And he says, and be as Hilal ibn al-Ala al-Raqi said, when I forgave all and harbored no rancor toward any, I relieve myself of the worry of enmity, right? So that's the first thing. Don't get into enmity with anyone, just excuse. Indeed, I give good greetings to my enemy upon seeing him, meaning the one who shows enmity to me, so as to repel evil with salutations. I display joy in meeting one I despise, as it has been filled, as if he has filled my heart with happiness. I am not safe with those I do not know. How then could I be safe with those who affect, meaning they act as though they love me? People are in illness, and their cure is abandoning them. By harshness towards them, the bonds of brotherhood are cut, right? So he says, keep to yourself, but don't be harsh. So make peace with people, and you will be safe from the troubles they cause, and be avid to acquire chivalrous traits. Deal with people with good character, and be patient as long as you remain with them. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Be you circumspect. Right? So he's just giving general advice about dealing with people. And a lot of that goes back to mudara, right? Al-mudara. And the mudara is sacrificing some dunya in the interest of deen or dunya. And that is like speaking in a way that's conciliatory, amicably, pleasant, gifting, but not praising someone that's corrupt. That is haram. That is haram. And then this, so some of these traditions relate in what preceded it, tawaddud al-nas, being beloved to people relates to this, and some of the other, being good. The last tradition we read was from the head of aql is after deen is being beloved to people and being good to everyone, whether they are pious or corrupt, right? Just that'll alleviate a lot of harm. Act in a conciliatory way that would render you beloved in speech, in expression, in generosity, and other things, courtesy, politeness, what have you. and be good to people, whether they're good or bad, right? And though obviously this is qualified by other traditions about being cautious, right? And Allah knows best. And this is a saying of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, that is also from Shu'ab al-Iman. He says, Iyakum wa mu'adatu rijal. Beware of enmity towards men, right? Don't become people's enemies. فَإِنَّهُمْ لَا يَخْلُونَ مِنْ ضَرْبَيْنِ, because they are one of two types. Min aqil yamkuru bika, someone who's smart, who will plot against you. Or jahil yu'ajjil alaykum bima laysa fikum, or an ignorant person who will rush to accuse you, falsely accuse you. Right? So it said, then what? Then don't fall an enemy. Just be careful, right? Be diplomatic so you don't unduly fall into enemy. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ الْكَلَامَ ذِكْرٌ. لا واعلم أن الكلام ذكر والجواب أنثى وحيثما اجتمعا الزوجان فلا بد من النتاج. Said, know that speech is male and the response is female, and when the two spouses come together, there will be progeny, right? So don't respond to everything that is said. Don't pour water don't pour fuel pour gas on the fire, right? The proper response to many things that are said is just to remain silent. قَالُوا سَلَامًا وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا, Allah says. When the ignorant speak to them, they say salam. And actually those last verses of Surah Furqan, essentially they mention a number of these points, right? Quranically. Right? إِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. When the ignorant speak to them, they respond with something that's peaceful, that doesn't escalate the situation. Right? وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا. And they pass idle talk, they do so in a good way. Right? And they're preoccupied with their Lord. الَّذِينَ يَبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا. They spend the night prostrating and standing for their Lord. La ilaha illallah. So then he began to mention poetry. He said, a person who has a clear reputation is the one who's cautious not to respond to everything that's said to him. And someone who is diplomatic to men, he is correct. وَمَنْ دَارَ الرِّجَالَ فَقَدْ أَصَابَ. Right? If you're diplomatic, that is the accurate course. وَمَنْ هَابَ الرِّجَالَ تَهِبُوهُ. And someone who respects other men, they respect him in turn. وَمَنْ حَقَرَ الرِّجَالَ فَلَنْ يُهَابَ. And someone who holds others in contempt will not be respected. Right? He hurts his own status with them. And Allah knows best. So this is some wisdom that he gives in terms of dealing with people. And he's one who scoops from the oceans of Sharia and Haqiqah, both of them. Rahimahullah, right? Of the law and the spiritual realities that are tasted by those who apply the law. Radiallahu anhu, right? May Allah be pleased with him and give us to benefit by him. In khairun lutfun afiyah. Question? Yes, sir.
Sheikh, what's the balance between being wary of friends and applying the ayah, اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم?
That's a great question. There's a whole treatise Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir wrote on husn dhan. And he mentioned that su'adhan is to come to su'adhan, what is su'adhan? Is to come to a negative conclusion in something that admits numerous possibilities, right? So you come to a negative conclusion when then something else could be the case, right? Or like an ultimate negative conclusion. Like they're bad and they'll never be good, rather than they're sinful now, but there's goodness in them and they may repent and die in a good state, right? Or something on the face of it, and remember Haddad mentions that, something on the face of it that's good to think it's bad, that's just the worst of su'adhan. Like someone's praying and you say, oh, they're just showing off, right? But what we're supposed to do is something that admits the possibility of good and bad, we assume the good. Right? Or if we see the bad, we assume still goodness in them ultimately. Right? So husn dhan is good, su'adhan is bad. But to be wary while not having su'adhan is higher than to be gullible and have husnadhan. And that was the state of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. Right? So they say that Sayyidina Umar said, I don't cheat and I will not allow myself, and cheaters don't get over on me. And they say that he was too intelligent to be cheated and too noble to cheat. Right? So being cautious and husnadhan are not antithetical. Right? The husnadhan entails the conclusion you come to, and the caution is something else. That's wisdom and savvy. Got to be savvy sometimes. Right? And then suspending judgment about what you know will protect you from su'adhan. Right? But wariness, that's just a course of action that in many cases the Sharia directs us to, such as transactions and witnessing transactions. All of that is to protect us. And they say basically when you enter a transaction, it should be as if you have su'adhan. You don't have su'adhan, but you enter it as if that this will protect me from being cheated, and there's a possibility that that could occur, and that will save you from disputes later.
Can you give a quick English translation of the dua for becoming knowledgeable?
Well, you already did it.
It's too quick.
Too quick. We'll conclude with it, inshallah, before we read the other dua.
Could you provide the Arabic for that one?
Yeah.
I could read it. If you want to write it,
Yeah.
you could write it from the recording too. I don't know if I'll be able to write it down. Inshallah. We might be able to search it and pull it up too. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's Rabbi zidni ilma. Oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. Wa wasi'li rizqi, and expand my sustenance. Wa barak li fima razaqtani, and bless for me what you have provided me. Wa jalni mahbuban fi qulubi ibadika, and make me beloved to the hearts of your servants. Wa azizan fi uyunihim, and make me precious in their eyes. وَوَجِيهًا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, and make me of eminence in this world and the next. Make me eminent in this world and the next. وَمِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ, and of those brought near to you. يَا كَثِيرَ النَّوَالِ يَا حَسَنَ الْفِعَالِ يَا قَائِمًا بِلَا زَوَالِ فَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ وَالْمِنَّةُ وَالشَّرَفُ عَلَى كُلِّ حَالٍ. O you who of great gifts, of beautiful works, you who exist without end, yours is praise, favor, like alhamdulillah, minnatu wa sharafu, and honor in every state. And Allah knows best. Would you pass me the khulasa, please? Yes, sir.
This should have covered parents, teachers, friends, acquaintances, and maybe it did this and that, yeah, but I guess how should we think about relatives? Should we put them in the category of acquaintances?
They're like between they're like the aqarib, the relationship resembles the relationships to parents, but not exactly. Right? It's not like you don't test them the same way, meaning the relationship is established by your blood tie. So it's not like a brother you're taking in your path. You might put an additional layer of that if you know, with your cousins or your brothers that you're seeking knowledge with, if they're biological brothers as well. But the relationship is already established by kinship, and they have rights as a result, like parents do. However, they're less than the parents are. So you never sever ties with parents, whereas with another family member who is corrupt in their behavior and will not change it, you may reduce ties with them, like limit them, and shun them, even shun some of their gatherings even. Imam Sheikh Bhuti He has a treatise, هكذا فلندعو إلى الإسلام, and I think his books are translated and you can probably download them. In this manner, let us call to Al-Islam. He answers the question of when a young person in the family becomes more religiously adherent and how they manage the various relationships in the family that may be strained by their increased adherence. And he makes a distinction between parents and between other relatives. And you could draw analogy from that to the degree that the relationships differ, right? They do differ some. Yeah. But ties of kinship are to be maintained. Silatul Rahim is to be maintained. Allah reward everyone for making jihad and ibadah, staying up all night or staying out all night. Many of you, alhamdulillah, and then worshiping today. And that was the way the Prophet ﷺ worshiped. فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب. When you free yourself up, then continue to exert and seek your Lord, desire your Lord. So that's what you do, especially in times like Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan. Keep striving and striving. Prophet ﷺ didn't fast more in any month than he fasted in Sha'ban, and he was not more striving in any other time than he was in Ramadan, right? He was made more ijtihad in Ramadan than he did outside of Ramadan, especially in the last 10, right? Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so after striving all of Ramadan, when the last 10 would come, he would give life to the night, tighten his wrapper, and awaken his family, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So let's keep working, inshallah. Allah accept what's been done. Allah reward you all. And وَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب. And when you're free, then continue to exert and seek your Lord. ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا ربي علمنا الذي ينفعنا ربي فكهنا وفكه أهلنا وقرابات لنا في ديننا مع أهل القدر أنثى وذكر ربي وفقنا ووفقهم لما ترتضي قولا وفعلا كرما وارزق الكل حلالا دائما وأخل أتقياء علما نحظى بالخير ونكفى كل شر ربنا واصلح لنا كل الشؤون وأقر بالرضا منك العيون واقض عنا ربنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا الرسل المنون واغفر استر أنت أكرم ستر وصلاة الله تغشى المصطفى من إلى الحق دعانا والوفاء بكتاب فيه للناس شفاء وعلى الآل الكرام الشرفاء وعلى صحبه المصابيح الغرار اللهم اهدنا بهداك وجعلنا ممن يسارع في رضاك ولا تولنا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا ممن خالف أمرك وعصاك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبة واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع أمين ربي اسمع فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سولي بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سولي بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سولي صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله والصحب عداد الطش الصحب والحمد للإله في البدء والتناهي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقك ورضا نفسك وزنة عرشك ومداد كلماتك